Right now, America's most powerful billionaires are quietly buying up a poison wasteland. It's a toxic desert choked by dust and dead fish. For decades, the Salton Sea was an environmental graveyard. But silently, Warren Buffett and massive energy conglomerates are pouring billions into this dirt. They aren't building real estate. They are hunting for a hidden, subterranean fortune that could stop a war with China before it even starts. Welcome to the green energy gold rush. The accidental oasis. The sweeping expanse of the Salton Sea was once a bone-dry, sun-baked desert basin, largely ignored by the expanding industrial might of early 20th century America. That was until a catastrophic engineering miscalculation permanently rewrote the geography of Southern California. In 1905, engineers working for the California Development Company attempted to cut new irrigation canals from the roaring Colorado River to feed the agricultural fields of the Imperial Valley. The heavy summer torrents proved entirely uncontrollable, breaching the poorly constructed headgates. For 18 months, the full force of the Colorado River emptied violently into the low-lying basin, defying all human efforts to plug the breach. By the time workers finally tamed the river, the uncontrolled floodwaters had submerged 350 square miles of desert floor, creating California's largest landlocked sea entirely by accident. By the mid-19th century, this engineering nightmare morphs into an absolute paradise. Promoters rebranded the accidental body of water as an elite tourist destination, a glamorous mirage nestled in the desert hills. Throughout the 1950s, luxury resorts, yacht clubs, and neon-lit casinos lined the booming shores. The Salton Sea rapidly became a playground for Hollywood royalty, outdrawing Yosemite National Park in annual visitor counts and tempting water skiers with its dense, buoyant waters. But a landlocked oasis with no natural outlet has a built-in expiration date. And when the boom times ended, it triggered one of the most horrific environmental disasters in American history. The toxic mirage. The paradise constructed by mid-century developers was fundamentally hollow, designed without considering the absolute rule of desert physics. Because the Salton Sea lacked any natural outflow or river drainage system, it was destined to function as a terminal lake, accumulating everything that washed into its basin without any way to flush it out. Year after year, millions of gallons of heavily contaminated agricultural runoff from the surrounding Imperial Valley farm empires poured directly into the water, carrying a toxic cocktail of chemical fertilizers, aggressive pesticides, and industrial waste. Under the punishing intensity of the desert sun, the fresh water steadily evaporated into thin air, leaving behind an increasingly concentrated solution of salt and chemical toxins. The consequences of this accumulation were catastrophic. Salinity levels in the landlocked basin rapidly exploded, eventually soaring past 60 grams per liter. This concentration is nearly double the salinity of the Pacific Ocean, transforming a vibrant ecosystem into a hostile, hypersaline dead zone. Millions of fish suffocated and died in massive, synchronized die-offs, their bodies washing ashore until the once glamorous beaches were completely whitened by carpets of decaying bones. As the decades progressed, the water boundaries retreated further, exposing miles of a deeply toxic mud playa. Desert windstorms kicked up this dried, poisoned silt, casting a massive, hazardous dust shadow directly over the respiratory systems of local communities. For 50 years, this valley was written off as a worthless, post-apocalyptic graveyard, until scientists looked thousands of feet beneath the toxic mud and realized they were standing on top of a geopolitical superpower. The subterranean inferno. To understand the hidden wealth of this post-apocalyptic basin, one must look past the desolate shoreline and peer directly into the violent geological underpinnings of the North American continent. The Salton Sea sits squarely within the Salton Trough, a highly volatile tectonic plate boundary where the grinding friction of the San Andreas Fault collides with the spreading rift of the East Pacific Rise. Here, the Earth's crust is stretched incredibly thin, pulled apart by continental forces that allow massive, active magma chambers to rise within just a few miles of the surface. This subterranean layout turns the deep underground water tables into a roaring, superheated pressure cooker. When rainwater and ancient sea runoff filter deep down to the fractured bedrock, they encounter these shallow volcanic plumes. The water is instantly superheated to staggering temperatures reaching up to 680 degrees Fahrenheit. kept liquid only by the immense hydrostatic pressure of the crust. This boiling fluid aggressively dissolves the surrounding rocks, transforming into a highly concentrated, ultra-hot chemical brine. Surface mud pots boil and hiss across the desert floor, offering small hints of the thermodynamic fury raging directly beneath the surface. For decades, utility companies only harvested this steam to turn turbines for basic electricity. But dissolved inside that superheated water was a microscopic atom that suddenly became more valuable than oil. The white gold equation. The global transition toward a clean energy future completely changed the value of the Salton Sea's subterranean volcanic brine. As the international automotive market undergoes a massive paradigm shift away from internal combustion engines, the demand for high-capacity batteries has turned lithium into the most coveted chemical element on Earth. It is a fundamental ingredient powering the modern world, essential for everything from smartphones to fleet-scale electric vehicle arrays. When geochemists finally performed a comprehensive chemical analysis of the wastewater produced by the desert's geothermal operations, they discovered that the superheated brine contained the highest concentration of liquid lithium found anywhere on the planet. This is not a modest mineral deposit. It is an absolute geological anomaly. A formal, exhaustive assessment conducted by the United States Department of Energy confirmed that the subterranean basin holds over 3.4 million metric tons of extractable lithium. This single geographic deposit contains more than enough raw material to build 375 million electric vehicle batteries, a number that eclipses the total number of vehicles currently operating on American roads. The estimated market value of the minerals locked away inside these deep, superheated reserves stands at a staggering $540 billion. This wasn't just a scientific discovery. It was a green light for an economic war. And it didn't take long for America's most calculated billionaires to move in and quietly secure the land. The billionaire land grab. The revelation of a $540 billion mineral reserve buried beneath an abandoned wasteland triggered an immediate, quiet corporate invasion of Imperial County. The world's most aggressive venture capitalists and industrial empires realized that whoever controlled the lease rights to this toxic mud would dictate the terms of the 21st century energy market. Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway Energy moved with clinical precision, rapidly absorbing the local utility companies and seizing absolute control over 10 of the active geothermal power plants operating across the volcanic basin. Buffett's conglomerate immediately committed over $1 billion to upgrade the local infrastructure, preparing the old steam facilities for massive chemical expansion. Right next door, a rival enterprise named Control Thermal Resources launched a highly ambitious Hell's Kitchen project. This massive engineering venture secured an immense $4.5 billion multi-phase investment framework, drawing capital directly from the elite financial institutions of Wall Street and the venture capital funds of Silicon Valley. Major automotive empires, led by General Motors, quickly signed exclusive procurement contracts, linking their future assembly lines directly to small, nondescript parcels of desert land surrounding the shrinking sea. But these billionaires aren't just chasing standard profit margins. They are running a high-stakes, desperate race to solve America's single greatest national security vulnerability. Decoupling from the dragon. The intense billionaire interest in the Salton Sea desert extends far beyond standard corporate balance sheets. It is an urgent matter of global geopolitics and national defense. As the world transitions toward a fully electrified infrastructure, the nations that control the supply chain for battery components will hold the same geopolitical leverage that OPEC nations held over oil in the 20th century. Currently, that leverage belongs almost entirely to a single foreign adversary. China maintains a near-total monopoly over the global battery market, controlling over 70% of the world's lithium refining capacity and dominating the manufacturing of battery cells. This lopsided balance of power creates a catastrophic national security vulnerability for Western democracies. The United States currently accounts for less than 1% of global lithium production, relying almost entirely on vulnerable oceanic shipping lanes to import processed materials from South America and Asia. If an economic embargo or military conflict were to sever these supply lines, the entire American green energy transition would immediately grind to a complete halt. The Salton Sea represents the only domestic resource large enough to break this foreign stranglehold and achieve complete American energy independence. If these facilities succeed, the U.S. instantly becomes a global energy exporter. But extracting this white gold requires an unprecedented technological gamble that has never been achieved at this scale. The direct extraction gamble. To unlock the massive wealth of the Salton Trough, engineers cannot rely on traditional mining practices. Standard lithium extraction is an incredibly destructive, environmentally ruinous process, requiring either massive, open-pit strip mines that leave permanent scars on the earth, or thousands of acres of slow chemical evaporation ponds that consume billions of gallons of water in regions like South America. Neither approach is legally or logistically viable in California. Instead, energy giants are risking their fortunes on an unproven, highly sophisticated technology known as direct lithium extraction, or DLE. The mechanics of this DLE process operate like a highly precise, closed-loop mechanical filter. Geothermal facilities pump the superheated brine from thousands of feet beneath the desert floor, using the high-pressure steam to spin electrical turbines first. Then, before the fluid cools, the hot brine is routed through specialized chemical extraction tanks filled with microscopic, engineered ceramic beads. These beads act like chemical magnets, selectively binding to the dissolved lithium ions, while ignoring the surrounding salt molecules. Within a few hours, the lithium is stripped from the solution, and the remaining eco-safe wastewater is immediately injected back down into the underground aquifers, leaving a near-zero carbon footprint. This technology compresses a traditional 18-month evaporation timeline down to less than 24 hours, while reducing the required geographic land footprint by 90%. But as hundreds of millions of dollars pour into these high-tech extraction facilities, the impoverished communities living right outside the security fences are realizing that the green energy future looks remarkably like the exploitative past. The shadow over Imperial Valley. The rapid influx of billionaire capital and high-tech corporate infrastructure stands in brutal contrast to the socioeconomic reality of the surrounding territory. Imperial County is one of the poorest, most economically marginalized, and historically overlooked regions in the entire state of California, characterized by double-digit unemployment and crumbling civic infrastructure. The long-suffering residents of towns like Nyland and Westmoreland have spent decades breathing in the toxic, pesticide-laden dust clouds kicked up from the receding shores of the Salton Sea. The health consequences are devastatingly clear. Children living in the immediate vicinity of this basin are hospitalized for severe, chronic asthma at more than double the rate of the rest of California. Now, as the world's wealthiest corporations build multi-billion-dollar fortresses in their backyards, local communities are growing deeply skeptical of the promises of widespread prosperity. Fears are mounting that the massive, industrialized direct lithium extraction facilities will consume the region's scarce freshwater resources, competing directly with the local agricultural workers who rely on the Colorado River canals to survive. The local population looks out at the sparkling new geothermal arrays and sees a familiar pattern of extraction, where external elites harvest the natural wealth of a vulnerable valley while leaving the permanent residents to deal with the long-term environmental fallout. Billionaires are building a trillion-dollar future in a valley left to choke on the past. And the ultimate success of America's grand energy revolution hinges on one final, terrifying paradox: the trillion-dollar desert. The unfolding transformation of the Salton Sea stands as the ultimate 21st century economic paradox. An accidental lake that evolved into a glitzy mid-century paradise, only to collapse into a toxic, post-apocalyptic graveyard, is now positioned to become the literal engine of the new green economy. It serves as a stark blueprint of modern capitalism, a place where profound environmental degradation, intense geopolitical panic, and unimaginable corporate wealth smash together in an empty, forgotten desert basin. The stakes of this high-tech industrial gamble cannot be overstated. By the year 2030, the global demand for refined lithium is projected to skyrocket by over 500%, driven by international climate mandates and the unavoidable realities of resource depletion. If the billionaire-funded facilities along the shoreline fail to master direct lithium extraction at an industrial scale, the entire global transition towards sustainable energy could stall out, leaving the world locked into a carbon-dependent loop. But if they succeed, this barren patch of poisoned California dirt will become the primary energy hub of the United States, sending high-voltage electricity humming through massive power grids that radiate outward to light up the entire nation. It is a powerful reminder that human civilization builds its cleanest futures on top of its dirtiest mistakes.